So good afternoon. My name is Kim Havey. I'm Director of Sustainability for the City of Minneapolis. Before we begin, I'd like to note that this meeting includes remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021 due to the declared local health pandemic. I will now call the meeting to order, and then I will I'll ask the chair to call the meeting to order, and then I can take the roll call.
Thanks, Kim. I will call this meeting to order. And if you take the roll, that'd be great. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so just let me know if you're present. Max Dalton.
Here.
Indigo David Liu.
Here.
Mark Denon. He's absent. Tess Dornfeld.
Here.
Matthew Douglas May. He had mentioned that he was going to be a little late, so I don't think he's here yet. Sandy Fazeli.
Here.
Lauren Fleming.
Here.
Divine Islam. I thought she had dialed in a little bit earlier. Leslie Jackson.
Present.
Hannah Johnson.
Here.
Toya Lopez. Barbara Lundy. I see you there. You're on mute, Barbara. Okay.
I've observed there's some lag today, so I would click and wait, Barbara.
Here.
Perfect. Nick Minderman.
Here.
Jacqueline Sabetta.
Here.
Aaron Niehoff is not going to be able to join us today. So we have 10 members present, and that's a quorum, so we can begin the meeting.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Can we, if folks have had a chance to review the minutes, first of all, does anyone have any corrections to the minutes? And does anyone not have a link to the agenda also? Okay.
Jesus, broken. I'll be right back.
Okay.
So I'm hearing no corrections to the minutes from the May 19th meeting. Is there someone who's willing to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I think,
I
I think the minutes and the agenda get approved at the same time, and we need to adjust the agenda.
Got it.
That's
Okay.
typically how we do it, but yeah.
Got it. Thanks for the assist, Sandy.
Just because of the roll call thing. Once we're back in person again, I don't have to worry about it.
Got it. Okay. May I have a motion to adjust the agenda to add the line 3 resolution discussion?
I move to, or go ahead, Sandy.
I'll move and Nick seconds.
Correct. I'll second.
And then along with that, so that's a motion to add the resolution and approve the minutes.
So we want to add the line 3 resolution under discussion. The idea?
Is anyone, is anyone, do we want to have a discussion? Is anyone opposed to that? All right,
Tess, I very briefly read your email. I think this is what you're suggesting. Is that correct? That there's a potential need to provide a formal support? Is that what Councilmember Gordon indicated?
Yeah, Cam Gordon said that it would be useful to have SEAC voice support.
What are we supporting?
I think we'll be
What-
discussing, but it's a motion, a city resolution condemning line 3.
So point of information, I just mentioned right now we're deciding whether we're going to discuss it. We don't want to get into the details right now.
Right. Thank you, Nick.
So we'll add the line 3 discussion after the other 2 ones that we have on the agenda. Is that
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
okay? Okay. We have we have a motion by Sandy and a second by Nick to approve the minutes and amend the agenda to add a discussion on line 3 or add a discussion about a line 3 resolution. That sound good?
Sounds right. Thank you.
Okay, so I can just run through the roll call. Max Stelton,
Aye.
Indigo David Liu,
Aye.
Tess Starnfeld,
Aye.
Matthew Douglas May, Sandy Fazzelli,
Yes.
Lauren Fleming,
Aye.
Divine Islam, Leslie Jackson,
Aye.
Anna Johnson,
Aye.
Toya Lopez, Barbara Lundy,
Aye.
Dick Vinderman,
Yes.
Jacqueline Zapeta.
Aye.
All right, we have 10 ayes and no nays, so the agenda with the amendment is adopted and the May 19th minutes are adopted.
Excellent. Thanks, Kim and everyone. I will. Do I have to read? Okay.
Yeah, the land acknowledgement. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and read the land acknowledgement. As we meet here today, we are reminded that Minneapolis is situated on the homelands of the Dakota people, an area that is steeped in rich indigenous history. It is home to indigenous people from more than 30 different nations. As a city, we have a responsibility to care for the land on which we live and work and all of its natural surroundings. This stewardship is an integral part of our involvement in this commission, and we honor it as we begin our meeting. We now open this space to discuss ways in which we can support Indigenous people in our community.
Whoa.
I have something I could add. If folks are interested in getting plugged into any of the work that's happening with Stop Bullying 3 and
Wonderful.
so like email me and reach out if you want to figure out ways to get connected. This is Jacqueline, by the way.
Hello, how are you? I'm well. How are you doing?
Thanks, Jacqueline. If we could have folks on the phone, make sure they're muted. We're getting some noise there. Jacqueline, do you mind repeating yourself? I didn't quite hear.
Sorry.
It sounds like
Come with the drink usually. Cheeseburger and French fries.
Okay, I'm gonna,
Two numbers, right? No, two of the $3 special.
okay.
Can somebody mute whoever's ordering a cheeseburger?
Yeah, I think we're good now. Yeah, Jacqueline, if you wouldn't mind repeating yourself, that'd be appreciated.
Jacqueline, you might need to unmute yourself there.
Okay. Sorry, it's a little different on the phone. Can folks hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. I was just saying if folks here or folks that you're connected to are interested in finding ways to get connected with the Stop Line 3 campaign up north, feel free to email me after this meeting, or and I can give information on how folks can get connected this summer. There's several different camps and ways to get involved and be helpful. Thanks.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Anyone else want to add to ways we can support Indigenous people in our community? Okay, hearing none, we can move on to the first item on our agenda, which is a discussion of the Upper Harbor Terminal Alternative Urban Area-Wide Review. So this is a big topic. Oh, sorry,
Anna,
go ahead.
Anna, I'm sorry. We're actually going to have the discussion with Luke on the city's Race to Zero project first.
Okay, great. Sounds great.
Sorry. Yeah.
No worries. Luke, I'll pass it over to you if you want to go ahead.
Okay, great. Thanks, Anna. Good to see everybody. Again, I'm Luke Hollenkamp from the Sustainability Division. I work for Kim, and I'm going to start sharing my screen so you can see a brief presentation. And this will be can you get confirmation that you can see the screen? Okay, great. And so please interrupt me or raise your hand or type in a comment, or that you have a comment during my presentation if you have any questions or anything you'd like to add. But I'd like to focus today on an update on Race to Zero and building off of the conversation you've been having on science-based greenhouse gas emissions goals. So first, I want to frame this by saying we in the Sustainability Office have been seeing two emerging ideas regarding cities and climate action. One is that cities must adopt more aggressive greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals. This is in line with a lot of the more recent IPCC recommendations, and there's a growing recognition that cities need to step up and do more. Many cities set their first goals a decade or so ago, and science has evolved since then. The second emerging idea is that cities are also not in complete control of accomplishing those goals. Early on, again, a decade or so ago, when cities were making goals, they were also showing wedge diagrams that would show how they were going to accomplish those goals, and a lot of times giving the impression that it was completely within their power to meet those goals. And now there's a growing recognition that that's not the case, unfortunately. And I'll come back to both of those points here throughout the presentation. So first, what is the city's Race to Zero campaign? It's a global campaign leading up to the next COP meeting, COP26. The idea is to rally leadership and support from a diverse group of organizations such as businesses, cities, regions, investors, for a zero carbon transition, and also then recognizing that this transition needs to create decent jobs, unlock inclusive sustainable growth. So this is a campaign that they're asking cities to sign on to make declarations in support of the Race to Zero. And specifically, what is being asked of cities is to do 5 things. One is to publicly endorse a number of principles shown here, foremost of which is declaring or recognizing a global climate emergency, which the city of Minneapolis has done, as well as then other commitments to making other commitments regarding the climate emergency and actions. The second part of Race to Zero would be pledging to be net zero by sometime in the 2040s or sooner, or mid-century 2050 at the latest. And this would be in line with the warming limit of 1.5 degrees Celsius. Then third, in advance of COP26, that there would be an interim target that would be set by a city that would say within the next decade, a city will reduce their emissions by a fair share so that globally emissions will be reduced by 50%. And what that actually looks like, that third goal, is outlined in this table here. My apologies if it's hard to see, but what it does is it lists different types of cities based on primarily their GHG emissions per capita, as well as the wealth of those cities. And the idea behind then this fair share concept is that cities that are emitting a lot of emissions per capita and thus have likely historically emitted a lot of emissions and are wealthy and can afford to make change should make the largest reductions by 2030. So Minneapolis would fall into that category specifically. And what that means is that'd be a 70 to 75% reduction compared to 2015 levels. And that would put us in a category with some other major international cities, such as Toronto, Melbourne, New York. What I found interesting about this graphic actually was that you've heard us previously talk about the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance that the city is a part of. And some of our colleagues are listed on this too, such as Toronto, Melbourne, New York. Also, there is Stockholm, London, Helsinki.
Yokohama is on there too.
Yep,
That's a
right.
CNCA, yeah.
Yokohama. So those are cities that are very engaged in this and the decarbonization efforts. But interestingly, they're in potentially different categories. And that can be kind of seen about how efficient or how decarbonized their society already is. So for a point of comparison, in Minneapolis, we are at 9.7 metric tons of CO2 per capita. So well above the 5.1 threshold that differentiates high and low emitting cities. That also is 12.6 metric tons CO2 per job. And although that sounds bad, which it is, it has decreased 30% since 2006. And part of that decrease per capita is because we have decreased emissions in real terms, and we've also added population to the city. So although inexact at this point, and an exact determination would be made at a later point in Race to Zero process, it would be a 70 to 75% reduction by 2030. And then rounding out the 5 elements that make up the Race to Zero pledge is that we would immediately proceed with planning one inclusive and equitable climate action. And there's a very long list, and I'll show a few examples of that can be chosen for participation in Race to Zero. And then finally, reporting progress annually regarding our emissions reductions, as well as the actions we're taking. And that's actually something that we, the city, are currently doing and have been doing for a number of years. So I want to put into context then these potential changes to our climate goals and what they and how they relate to where we are today. I believe CIP has seen this image previously. We have a number of climate goals established already by the Climate Action Plan. Our primary one is an 80% reduction by 2050. And then we have an interim goal of a 30% reduction by 2025. And we have already passed and actually met the 15% reduction by 2050. So these are the current goals, and we are making progress towards those goals. If you then were to look at that historical data, which are the purple dots on this graph, you'd see we're trending down, although there's a little fluctuation year over year. And the blue line is actually not a trend line, although it looks like it. The blue line is the trajectory we would need to hit those reduction goals in 2025 and in 2050. So it's somewhat of a coincidence that we happen to be, our trend line for our actual progress is about in line with the trajectory we need to meet our near-term goals. And one caveat here, though, is that we've primarily reduced emissions from electricity, which has led to our emissions reductions overall. At some point, when we're at 100% renewable, there is no juice left to squeeze out of that action. And at that point, we have the much tougher job of tackling natural gas emissions in particular. So our trend line right now, although it looks like we are in line with these goals, once we get to decarbonize electricity, we will start to deviate from the trend line if we don't do something to substantially reduce emissions from gas. Now we can stack up then our current goals and those current required trajectories with the new goals. As you can see, they are much, much more aggressive. In particular, the way that the language of Race to Zero is set up is you could think of there being potentially two trajectories to choose from. One I would call the aggressive trajectory, which is a 75% reduction by 2030. Again, that's that fair share science-based reduction. And then culminating with 100% reduction at the end, but having that reduction be on the earlier side, 2040. There could be seen a more conservative pathway, which would be at 70% reduction by 2030, and then our 100% reduction occurs in 2050 at the latest. So there is a difference between those, particularly in the longer term, because there's a difference of 10 years accomplishing decarbonization, but they both are very similar to each other, especially compared to where our current goals are. So this would be representative. Adopting these goals in as official city policy and within an updated climate action plan would represent a whole new level of effort needed to meet them. And it would be not continuing the activities we're doing that we're finding some success in. It would be redoubling those and tripling those and adding many, many more activities. And to achieve those goals now, we're seeing this recognition that although the cities are setting these goals, it's really cities and partners that need to pressure the national governments, which are the official bodies to the COP talks, to act in order for these subnational actors to meet their climate action goals. So I highlighted this element at the bottom of the statement from Race to Zero that this will send governments, namely national governments, a resounding signal that cities, regions, businesses, investors are united in meeting the Paris goals and create a more inclusive and resilient economy. So the idea is not that cities have the power unto themselves to meet these goals, but by declaring it, they're signaling to their national governments the need for those governments to also make similar declarations and promises. So this recognition of, in some ways, humility of towards our climate goals is a different way that cities are starting to think about this. And it is in some ways a little jarring, because I think in the first generation of climate action plans that many cities created, there was a lot of, to be frank, cheerleading that said cities can accomplish great and amazing things, and that we will be the light for the world, and that with our success, we will show the rest of the world how they can accomplish their climate goals as well. There has been now over the last decade or so recognition that there's been some success in that, but that there is simply too few levers for cities to pull. That there's many more levels for state and national or nations to pull, and that cities in many ways are a little downstream from those. But we do have an important role still, although we can't by ourselves necessarily meet our climate goals. And Boulder has, I think, a really nice visual regarding this, which thinks about the different spheres that the city can engage in. And there's a very small sphere, which is the sphere of control, that the city can actually via policy and programming and the spending they have at disposal make concrete changes towards decarbonization. Then there's the sphere of influence where the city is an actor within a larger political ecosystem. The way you could think about this is if within our office, the way we have Stacy Miller going to the Public Utilities Commission and acting on the city's behalf as an official intervener in those proceedings. We're trying to influence something that's at a larger regulatory level than the city. And then there's the sphere of influence, which we have even less sway over, but covers very, very important topics. And Boulder is very clear here that because of their regulatory nature, their energy supply via electricity is actually, they feel within their sphere of interest, not their sphere of control. So this represents a different way of thinking about what can be accomplished by cities, even though we're making these very aggressive climate goals. And another visual from Boulder, it may be hard to see in your screens, but I encourage you to look at the PDF that Kim sent out, is then putting that new context into action. And what that looks like is here, as they say, acting beyond their boundaries, thinking about the ways they can best work within those different spheres, that they can work as much as they can to achieve those regional and national goals. There's the emerging desire to center equity, desire and need, particularly because that has so many local benefits to citizens, as well as building a resilience, which has local benefits. There's a lot of emerging concepts on drawing down carbon in preparation for having a negative carbon world, as well as to offset the areas where the city does not have an ability to reduce carbon. We can at least offset or draw down carbon within our boundaries by things such as our urban forests. Also, we have a responsibility to count all of our emissions so we can be fully transparent. We need to expand our focus to be just beyond kind of our traditional accounting methodologies, and then working hand in hand with our community, which is our most valuable asset for climate action, particularly at the local level. So this represents a different way of thinking. It's a little bit more humble, and it's a recognition that we need to, that our desire and our ability to meet our climate goals is dependent on other actors, and that we need to recognize that, and then we need to work to influence or control or to express our interest with those actors when possible. And finally, I'll just mention that one of the ways to be thinking about what is within the city's control, and particularly what can have local benefits, is via one of the steps of adopting the race to zero targets. And that is that the city had to, or will be requested to implement an inclusive and equitable climate action. And these shown here are just the categories. There's actually on the Race to Zero website many sub-bullets on here of very specific actions. But the city will be looking to implement one of those. And there's actually, to be frank, many of them already in the climate action plan, and many that have actually been accomplished by the city already. But what would be interesting as maybe a follow-up to this conversation would be to hear directly from SEAC individually and then as a group, if you were to look at this list, and we'll provide resources in the future to look at this list, what would you say is the one climate action that really needs to be prioritized for inclusion into any upcoming climate action plan update? What we're hoping to hear from you all is your thoughts on what is, again, meaningful in terms of GHG reductions, is within the city's control to actually make progress on, and also then helps create a more inclusive and equitable climate action. So I know in the future we'll be reaching out to ask you to review more specifically some of the resources we'll provide, and at a later meeting date, report back and have a conversation on, if you were to each individually choose one action, what would it be and why? And that'll help inform our team here at the city as we are continuing to plan for the climate action plan update, and see if there are a few items that stand head and shoulders above others that we need to make sure are included in a climate action plan, particularly early in the planning process. And with there, I might pause too and see, Kim, if you had anything you wanted to add to this.
Yeah, well, thanks, Luke. I'm sorry, I might have a little echo there. Okay, the great presentation. I know there's quite a number of different pieces in here to sort of unpack, but one of the things we wanted to do is have to think about having SEAC make a recommendation on one of the activities that we're going to, obviously pledge to do, and so that would be really important. But I also wanted to get folks discussing the concept that we're talking about here, that the race to zero was used as sort of the platform to discuss it, but the acceleration of these climate goals, and kind of what are the trajectory with that. I mean, I'd like to see people's thoughts, reactions to uh, this sort of follow up on our science-based climate goals, and then also just to hear too about what are some of the things in relationship to sort of the systemic broad pieces, what you thought about that discussion that Luke talked about, that Boulder and some other cities around the country are thinking about. We've had some internal discussions on. So I want to just have a discussion on some of these things too and get your thoughts. Leslie has a hand up.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I have a question. Why did you pick Boulder? And have you look at outside of the United States to see what's being done?
That's a good question. I picked Boulder just as an example here because they are one of the dozen or so cities we are part of the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance with. So we are communicating with them pretty regularly. And they actually reached out to our network, and I think really kind of started this conversation about needing to think about local climate action differently. So they're someone we've particularly heard from in the past, and that we rarely talk to. But they definitely are not the only ones thinking about this.
Tess in the chat asked if you know why emissions dropped so sharply in what looks like 2012.
I believe that was a very warm winter,
Mm.
and thus we had less natural gas use. It actually might have been a warm winter and a cool summer.
Mm.
So a lot of that kind of bumpiness, year variation, is almost exclusively tied to how cold of a winter we have and how warm of a summer we have. But particularly the winter is influential.
Thanks. Sandy?
Thanks, Luke. Great presentation. I really like the framework about sphere of control versus influence. And I'm curious from sustainability's perspective, Kim and Luke, what do you feel like, is kind of the lowest hanging fruit that, the city can really achieve through the climate action plan? I think that could help us sort of frame what would be or triangulate what's of interest to the community versus what is really achievable and high impact.
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the things that we were planning on doing and following up is really taking a look at all the actions in there and having some feedback on things that we've already initiated or completed or passed to see how that relates to those particular actions. And then we can kind of see what additional components that are offered in there, how they relate to these different sort of spheres of influence. So that's a good question. We don't have it specifically tied down based on these examples, but like starting a food council, we know we've had that going on for quite some time. Of course, that's something we have direct control over. So that's an example of one of the things that they had put out there. But we will go through the list and provide some feedback on where things are at currently with city policy on those actions.
Nick, you want to go ahead?
Sure. I think the the spheres of influence, I agree, is a great visualization. I think as we dive into it, it might make sense to think about where there's extra granularity that we should be adding to that's specific to Minnesota. So, I'm thinking about things like, for example, the Metropolitan Council has responsible for certain things like wastewater management, but the city has responsibility for water, for drinking water provision. And so there are splits and things that, in some communities may be viewed as together, but here they're separated, or, the same with roads, that the city can take significant action in terms of the footprint and the travel patterns on city streets, but has less impact on county and MnDOT roads. And so I think as we, as SEAC, want to approach what the city's control is, it's both about kind of these general spheres of influence, but then specifically the bubbles are big. How much of that bubble falls within the city's influence versus another one? I know another topic that SEAC has talked about quite a lot is zero waste, and whether there's a connection between zero waste and the HERC. And the city can do a lot to reduce waste, but that still might not fix the HERC problem. And so I think that we can use this as a framework to start the discussion of where we can focus the city's efforts.
Leslie?
Thank you. I have a question, because you're working on this plan, cutting down pollution and all these great ideals going on here, and the city only has so much control over certain entities. I'm wondering, to make this successful, have you thought about including the county into this, because they have a lot of, they have a big polluter, and things can change there if we can't shut it down, as far as with the residents, and giving the residents incentive to recycle more and things like that, to cut down some emissions and the pollution. So I was just wondering, are you thinking about including the county in this? Because I think they're a major key player as well. But this is a good idea and I like it.
Yeah, Leslie, I would say you're absolutely right. I mean, the county has been a big partner of the city on many initiatives, but doesn't necessarily mean we see eye to eye on every issue too. So I would kind of, in general, put Hennepin County within that sphere of influence. And, you can include in that many of their policies and their operations and things like, HERC as well. But I think the county kind of squarely fits in that sphere of influence where, we don't have necessarily the direct control over their decisions, but we do have more sway than them being further out in the sphere of interest. We're a key player with them.
Yeah, I think too, we have some very specific interests, because of the direct impact that we have from county operations like the HERC within Minneapolis. And it's probably more of an issue for the city because we see the direct impacts of it. And but it's obviously a very significant component of the services the Hennepin County provides to much broader, constituency. So yeah, we have influence, but not necessarily complete control. But there's always, little by little making progress and setting goals and, putting a stake in the ground. Hopefully that would can make change happen over time.
Thanks everyone for this discussion. I think I'll jump in here to say that I really appreciate you bring this forward, Luke, and I really appreciate the really clear presentation. And I feel very supportive of the more aggressive greenhouse gas reductions, which are in line with science. And the kind of the framing of the wealthy cities having more aggressive goals makes a lot of sense to me, because greenhouse gas emissions stay in the atmosphere for, or at least CO2 stays in the atmosphere for over, I forget what the timeline is, like 300 years or whatever. So we, as the US and as Minneapolitans, have more responsibility for historic levels of emissions that are causing the climate change we're feeling now. So we have more responsibility for reducing our emissions as a developed city and country that's been responsible for past emissions. So I really like that that's kind of taken into account. Barbara, got your hand up? I think you're muted.
I take it that this whole report was about the actual operations of the city of Minneapolis, not the totality of the city of Minneapolis, which includes all its citizens and so forth. And if that is true, I think it one should make it clear that it is discussing the operations of the city itself.
Thanks, Barbara, for the comment. So you're right, this needs clarification. The emissions that I'm showing in this chart here are community-wide emissions. So that is the city operations plus the community, residents and businesses. So setting of a new goals in line with Race to Zero goals would be saying a new goal for the entire community.
Thank you.
Any other discussion before we wrap this up?
And I might just add one last thought, a little bit to Sandy, to your question about, what did Kim and I think maybe is in that sphere of control. As I was making this presentation and thinking the last few days, it just struck me that we may need to think less, and I think I need to think less too, about, in absolute terms, like metric tons of CO2 saved by inaction, because that is a benefit seen by the entire world, but it's a benefit that's often not felt viscerally by the community, which means that our climate action, I think, isn't as resilient because people aren't seeing that benefit day to day. And it just so happens that what's within our sphere of control is often those items that actually do have a difference in people's lives. So maybe we need to spend more time focusing on that sphere of control, and particularly those items then that have co-benefits beyond, I think, a reasonable level of GHG reductions, but that impact people's lives, either helping them build wealth or helping reduce disparities, or that are anti-racist, or that are increasing people's, actual health. Maybe that's the sweet spot to be thinking about the things we can control and that bring lasting change at the local level that people can really feel.
Got a thumbs up from Sandy, looks like, and I would second that thumbs up. I think that, yeah, that sounds like it definitely would help create buy-in too for climate action in addition to the co-benefits. Thanks so much, Luke. We really appreciate you spending your evening with us and your expertise as always. So feel free to keep listening or log off and doing what you need to do.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks, everybody. Yeah. And just want to check, is Barbara's your hand up from your previous comment, or did you have a new comment?
I did not have a new comment. I will lower my hand. Sorry.
Just wanted to check. All right. Thanks,
Perfect.
everybody.
Thanks for checking, Luke. I think I'll note also that ask to come up with the inclusive and equitable goals is noted, and we can talk about adding that to a future agenda. So sounds like a fun assignment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, just putting out there would be great to have a recommendation. We don't have to necessarily do it at this meeting, but on, kind of what would be our action as part of the race to zero. And I'd also like to get sort of thought feedback recommendation in regards to pursuing the science-based targets. Is that something we should be teeing up for our, is that a recommendation to the city to tee up as part of our update to the climate action plan? So we can add that continued discussion for next meeting. I think so. I'll turn it over to Anna, and thanks so much for the good discussion. And thanks, Luke, for coming to talk about it.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kim. All right, let me pull up the agenda again. So as I started to say before, the next item on our agenda is the Upper Harbor Terminal. This is a really, really big topic, and we wanted to give ample time to it. I think if we could maybe till 6:30 or so, because we've got a few more things to talk about afterwards, if we want to talk about it that long. I'll sort of tee it up, and Kim, feel free to interject and then add on if you wouldn't mind to my very minimal introduction. But the Upper Harbor Terminal, I think folks are aware, is a development project that the city's been working on for several years. In North Minneapolis, it's some significant land along the Mississippi River that was a former industrial use that is being reimagined and redeveloped. In terms of process, we are at the point where there's an environmental assessment. I can't remember what exactly, environmental type of assessment.
It's called an alternative urban wide review. So it does include some aspects of the EAW and or environmental impact statement or environmental assessment worksheet. Perfect.
Thank you, Kim. And those comments are due June 24th. It's open for public comment, that alternative, the AUAR. Comments are due June 24th at 4 p.m. So we wanted to open up a discussion to talk about if we want to submit comments. If we do, Aaron was kind and generous to draft up a draft letter that we could work off of. I know it's kind of difficult to draft a letter in a meeting, so we could also propose a different process for submitting comments. But yeah, I just wanted to open up the group to discuss the possibility of submitting comments, thoughts about the project, thoughts about the AUAR, and anything else. And Kim, if you could do some damage control on everything I just said.
No, it's all good. Yeah, I did post the sort of link to the comments there, and also to the presentation that they did do about 10 days ago at the Green Zones. CPED staff wasn't available to come to this meeting, but I felt like because of the 30-day comment period ending on June 24th, it was important to bring folks forward. So I'm happy to walk through. I'm familiar with the AUAR. I'm happy to walk through the presentation if that would be helpful, but if not, we certainly can talk about the different aspects of it as well, whatever would be more beneficial for our time today.
I would certainly personally benefit from you walking us through the AUAR. Do folks have any thoughts about that? in favor or against?
I agree. Anna?
Okay, thanks, Sandy.
Okay. All right, we'll just do a little share screen here. All right, so yeah, I apologize, this isn't my presentation here, but I can tell you a little bit about it since I'm pretty familiar with the process. But want to talk a little bit about the background project just to sort of ground people. What is the alternative urban area-wide review? What's the components that are studied in it and what did they find from it? And then provide an opportunity to give comments. So as Anna kind of mentioned early on, AUAR is really a hybrid between an environmental assessment worksheet and an EIS, environmental impact statement. And it also is kind of a planning document. So it's looking at various different types of uses and different scenarios and seeing what the impacts are from those uses and analyzing the cumulative impacts both during the construction as well as during operations of the site. And this is intended to inform zoning changes, land use permits, that kind of thing. So they are doing this because the state of Minnesota does require an environmental review when it's this size of project. And this project's 53 acres and as you can see here, exists along about a mile, the upper Mississippi River. There's a partnership that already has come forward with an approved concept plan that includes United Properties and First Avenue Productions, as well as the Park Board and the City of Minneapolis. And so the scenario, we'll talk about the different scenarios that they looked at, but there's really two phases of development that they're proposing. And there'll be different mixed uses that we'll go through as far as what they look like. So here's the scenarios that the AUAR looked at. And so they analyzed basically doing no build scenario of residential and basically 110,000 square feet of single story commercial industrial. That was sort of the baseline. There would be no music venue, no recreation. So that's sort of like baseline, almost basically where it is today. Then in scenario one, they looked at having 520 units of housing and 315,000 of non-commercial office industrial. And scenario two is sort of the maximum density that's allowed under the current comprehensive plan. And includes, of course, the music venue as well, and doesn't include any industrial storage. So what would be the sort of impacts? Here's a nice picture of sort of the no build scenario. This is what it would stay like. And here, of course, the big Riverside plant on the northeast side. And so here's the various scenarios that they would have: parkland here, the community performance center here, urban food production processing, other manufacturing, housing, mixed income affordable housing, senior housing along the riverfront here. So those would be the scenario one components, and they'd include about 520 units of housing. And then scenario two, which isn't quite mapped out as much, would include a higher density of housing, as I mentioned earlier. The topics that they study within the AUAR are these listed here, including fish and wildlife, water resources, whether there's historic properties, and then the impacts visually, air, noise, transportation. And then as part of this, the goal is to really identify what the issues are and then to lay out a mitigation plan or a way to look at how you're going to address those issues. So within land use, as it states here, they're in a couple of different interesting pieces going on here. The proposed outdoor amphitheater is not currently part of a recognized use in any Minneapolis code, so the zoning would have to be updated to be able to recognize that. There would have to be also a rezoning to allow for housing development and other future land use. There's also building height related aspects too because of its proximity to the Mississippi River. There's geology and soils. I think I'll just sort of go through some of these here a little more quickly. The water resources they're looking at are surface, stormwater, wastewater, and some of the issues that are needed there in regards to permitting, the infrastructure, what they would need to meet and be compliance with the new stormwater regulations. This would definitely impact that. And I know also there are new standards for the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization around stormwater and Mississippi River flow or water flow to the Mississippi. Then there's the contamination or hazardous waste. This is something that's been, there's some folks, there hasn't been as much testing as some folks would like to see on here to determine whether the hazardous waste is here. They basically, are working with the MPCA to coordinate any handling or disposal of hazardous waste they find. They are looking at the fish and wildlife, native vegetation and planting, really working to do shoreline restoration, and much of the parkland will create a buffer along the Mississippi River. And then we've also got historic properties. Right now, they don't believe there is any historic properties, but they are actually going to consult with the State Historic Preservation Office to determine whether there might be potential areas of historic preservation there, but at this point they don't see that. And then there's visual and relationship to the Community Performance Center, lighting, uplighting, and of course, and working with bird pathways. And there's also issues around noise, which is mainly related to the Performing Arts Center and how that's going to be looked at and developed. And then there's transportation impacts and how that would be changed as well too. So I won't go through all these different pieces here as far as the mitigation strategies, but that's sort of the general overview of the components that are included in it. The schedule here is that there's a comment period that runs through the 24th of June. That'll be reviewed, again, published, and then a final review by the City Council on September 21st. And there is Hillary Dvorak is the lead principal planner for this particular project. So that was a real quick kind of just overview. If folks have questions, I'll do my best to ask or to be able to answer them. And so, yeah, I'll turn it back over to Anna.
Thanks, Kim. Any questions or discussion? I guess I have one, Kim. Maybe this is obvious, but so does the AUAR take the place of an EIS? It said the level of kind of detail and assessment is similar to an EIS, but does it replace the need for like a state level environmental impact statement?
Yes, it would basically take, unless there was something that pointed to the AUAR that they needed to go into a more advanced environmental assessment. This would basically take the place of that.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Nick?
So first of all, it's unfortunate that we don't have Aaron here for this because Aaron has been following Upper Harbor Terminal since 2017, maybe. So I think the letter is important that Aaron has already drafted. I think people should look at that as they can right now, and we use that as an important starting point. If we choose to move a letter forward this evening, I would suggest that the wording still be that the letter is sent subject to final approval or final revisions at the chair's discretion or something like that. So that if we make any changes or additions to it tonight, that Aaron has the chance to take a pen to it and make sure that it fits in with the knowledge that Aaron has. The second thing that I think is probably important as an advisory body, I would strongly suggest, Kim, if we can, trying to get somebody from CPED at our July meeting, since it says that they're going to publish the final AUAR in July, and we have the opportunity to write a letter both as a public comment that's due this month, but also write a letter directly to the council based on what that final AUAR looks like. And especially if there are comments that are highlighted in our letter that are reflected by the community that don't make it into the final plan, I think we should expect to write a letter again.
Thanks, Nick. I really appreciate those comments. Leslie?
Thank you. I just got concerns about this way that they did the environmental statement and the changes that has been happening with the way the policies and the permits are written. And they don't have, I looked over it and I don't even see how they plan to remove any contaminant soils or anything. And so I'm so against this AUAR because it's not as detailed as an EAW. And I really want to, I really would like the opportunity to go out there with them on the site and see how they analyze it. I think that would be a great thing for me to do because I like doing that. But that was my core class at the U. That was my favorite. But anyway, I'm really curious about it and see how they just make these decisions on such a vast land and just take it this one entity and just say this is how it is, when there's more things to it on this landscape that they're redeveloping. And my whole thing, I don't, let's make it clear. I don't care what people build there. I don't care what you do. Let's just manage it so it's a healthy and safe environment for all, because everything interconnects. And I just have issues about the removal of the soil, of this contaminants. Where is it going to go from here? How far is it going to travel? And what neighborhood is it going to go through? Because these little droplets are going to be everywhere. We already have this mass construction all over the city, almost over the state. And the city has cut down employment. We're down to 2 inspectors where we had 4. And we're depending on these entities who are doing this work to inspect their own land. But as you drive and stuff with the wind uptake and the growth of population and everything, this stuff is moving around. And with that contaminants from that site, it's going to continue to mix into our air and make us sick. And I don't know about everybody else, but I'm an old lady here and I'm trying to live. So I've just got concerns about the contaminants and the management of the land. And I don't agree with this environmental statement and how they did it. And that's my whole take on this whole project. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yes, especially.
So I just put a quick link to the letter, but Leslie, are you saying that you'd like to put forward a recommendation that there be an environmental assessment worksheet completed as part of the comments?
Yes, I definitely would, because they're lacking the placement of where they're taking these contaminants. And I know it's starting at over North Minneapolis, but then the journey on that road where it's going, who knows if they're going to jump on the freeway, because I don't know these drivers. I drove down freeways and truck stuff is falling out, but I'm just saying the removal and how they plan to do that, it needs to be included. Personally, I would tell them, no, we do not want to use this AUAR. I want an EAW, but the EAW has changed too, because there was a couple of months ago, a couple of weeks ago, the pollution control asked for inputs for people to see how the changes were going and what did you think about it and yada, 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 because they were reconstructing it. And I don't, that needs, you know, some things had changed in there, and there, as well as the permits for the city. So now we don't have soil management. We only have stormwater management, which is to me crazy, because then you take out another important entity. So I'm thinking back in the Dust Bowl time when all the land is open and everybody just la, 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 you know. So, it's COVID has gone crazy. Our population in the city's gone crazy, and now we got the soil going crazy. And my whole thing is the health and welfare of all people that dwell here. And so I'm against this AAW, and I would love, like, again, yeah, we need that in there. And I can ramble on about it, but I won't.
Thanks, Leslie. Yeah, it's definitely noted. And especially, yeah, being so close to the river, you know, if there's contaminated soil that's not being managed, then that goes into the river, which affects drinking water for folks. And so noted that, yeah, requesting an EAW on the site is something we could add to the letter.
Excuse me, not just the water, but the air itself. You know, and this stuff is going to travel on your car. I don't know if you guys go outside and look at your cars, but sometimes there's beads of soil on there, and that's stuff we're breathing. And so this stuff is going to pick up wind, and it's going to catch us. Somebody's going to catch it. And that's all I'm saying is, and it goes in the air, not just the water. You know.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
That's the point.
Yeah, no, thank you for that clarification. Additional discussion or questions?
I was just trying to skim Aaron's letter, and I'm not seeing anything about it, about emissions, which I understand are not included in the AUAR. It doesn't look at climate and greenhouse gas impacts at all, including the likelihood that the Performing Arts Center would be heated with fracked gas. And then the other thing that I think is missing from the AUAR that we should mention in the letter is that the cumulative potential effects leaves out the traffic on 94.
Thank you. Important.
Oh, that was a good call.
Great. Okay, cool. So just so far, just to recap, hearing things to potentially add to the letter, adding an EAW, talking about mitigation and testing around soil in terms of it being contaminated, how it's transported, potential runoff into the river, as well as the potential for it to be kicked up and breathed in by humans. And then emissions from the whole project, including if the large performance center, and also I would add like residential buildings are going to have a gas hookup and be powered by fracked gas. And the cumulative potential impacts leaves out traffic on I-94, which is important. Yes, not insignificant at all.
Yeah, if I can just add to the emissions that it also doesn't, I mean, it doesn't address climate at all. So also vehicle emissions construction emissions, including in the supply chain, like for concrete in particular, and then operations, as I said.
Excellent. Thank you. Leslie, do you have your hand up again? Or is it from last time?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Go for it.
My question is, because of what they're doing, are they planning, I know they use their own inspectors, are they planning to contribute to having more inspectors and training them? You know, even if it's students or something working part-time, because the city cut them. So who's going to make sure and ensure that this stuff is happening and managed properly? You know, I'm just wondering, because we don't have inspectors, and I'm still trying to figure out, is there money to hire more, and then they cut it. So I'm very confused about that. But with all the construction, and then you cut it, and then you depend on these people, just like we depend on people to manage their own stormwater at these facilities, and you see how that's working. So I'm just very curious about, you know, these people wanting to play with the dirt and opening the soil. And I don't know, even know if they even realize this, you know, it's like, oh, it's over north, or it's in this area that this stuff travels. And that's all. I'm just very curious if inspectors are going to be included in this, and do they have their own team of inspectors, and how many are going to be there to ensure, and how often? Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. Yeah, important point. So checking up on what they say they're going to do, both during construction and while the facility is completed and operating. Nick?
Tess was first.
Oh, Tess, go ahead. Thanks.
Thanks. I'm more of a process question that I don't know if you have any insight on, Kim. With the deadline being next week, I know that for Roof Depot, the deadline ended up being extended last minute. And if that's something that is worth including as something that we'd like to ask for, especially I tried to attend the open house that they held last week, and Teams was just so dysfunctional that I couldn't get into the presentation at all until halfway through the Q&A at the end. It just does not seem like a very robust public engagement process to only provide a month for comment and have only one public meeting that has issues with it. I mean, even without, I feel like there should be more than one opportunity for to have an open house and have public comment through other means than written. So I don't know if you have any insight on whether that's something useful that we could include in our comments.
I think it would be useful to include in the comments. And actually, my office, we did request an extension. We're denied the extension. So yes, it would be helpful for us to have that. Just because, like this too, we wanted to put this out there and it kind of had to move very quickly from the time that it was out. So requesting some additional time for review, I think is certainly worthwhile putting in the letter. Whether they'll extend it, I like I said, that we have asked, but doesn't hurt to ask again, I guess. And certainly, we certainly could also, like within the comments, put that in there, but then also we can write a letter to the city council at a later date, because of course they're voting on it later in the year too. So it's just sort of trying to get in on the sort of immediate schedule, but there's an opportunity for additional comment discussion with the council.
Sure. Yeah, just thinking for the public in general as well. Thanks.
But yeah, totally. Yeah.
Thanks, Tess. Really good question, because also 30 days to respond to a pretty dense document is also not a very long time to digest it and put something out. Nick?
The point that folks have made about 94 and cumulative impacts has reminded me that MnDOT is currently doing a study to determine whether they will make improvements to 252 and whether those improvements to 252 will result in changes on 94 as far south as potentially all the way down to downtown Minneapolis, but definitely they're looking at the area to Dowling from the north. And so I think when we have the conversation about cumulative impacts, we need to encourage that they not only consider cumulative impacts of what exists now plus this project, but also acknowledging that this project is not happening in isolation from other potential infrastructure projects that could increase impact that the city has less control over. So this is an example where the city can at least try to mitigate when it is land that the city owns and ultimately has some control over, where MnDOT may be able to do what they want with less opportunity for the city to weigh in.
Thanks, Nick. Right. If there's going to be known additional cumulative impacts within a couple of years, they should be taking that into consideration. Thanks everyone so far. Not to stop the discussion at all, but I just really appreciate this, all this really thoughtful feedback so far. Any other thoughts, questions? Nick, did your hand just go up again? Couldn't tell.
I might have triple clicked by accident, I'm sorry,
Okay,
or double clicked.
cool.
Should be down.
Got it, thanks. Any other, I'll just leave it open for a couple more seconds in terms of thoughts or questions.
So if there are no questions, I think our next point is to make a motion to adopt the letter and send it. Do folks feel like they have had enough opportunity to review the letter to feel comfortable voting on something, given that this is a little bit last minute since it came up somewhat unexpectedly?
Barbara?
Could someone share their screen and show us the proposed letter?
Kim, would you be willing to do that? I could also do that if not.
Here, just give me 1 second to pop it up.
Kim, do you think you could zoom in at all? It's a little small.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is that better?
Yeah.
But you'll have to scroll.
Yes, there we go. We'll do a little scroll down. I'll just move down here like this.
Did we get a copy of this letter? I'm looking through my email.
No, I did. I can send it to the link, and there's a link I put in the chat as well. Would you like me to email it to you, Leslie?
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm. We'll have to move this down a little bit here.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm just a quick question. Is there any opportunity for the public to make any comments, or are we just listening in on this meeting?
No, it's possible for the public comment, sure.
Okay, because
It's
I
up to
don't have a screen. But I did want to just, if it's okay, I'd like to make a couple comments.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Can you also say,
my
do
name
you
is,
mind saying who you are? Thanks.
I was just getting ready. Yeah, my name is Karen Peterson. I am on the board of the Sheridan Neighborhood Organization in Northeast Minneapolis, and I'm also a member of the Above Falls City Advisory. And loving everything I'm hearing you say. Our traffic, mass transit is really lacking. And I worry the city has sort of forgotten that this is a once in a generation opportunity. And if we're going to do this, we really do it right. Like, don't put production, manufacturing back on the river after spending decades to get it removed. We should be celebrating the river with a boat launch that will allow dinner cruises, kayak rentals. That was one thing. You've already mentioned the bird safe glass. And I totally agree with everything Leslie was saying that this is a soft touch environmental review, and it really should be a bigger, deeper dive. It's the cumulative effect that we're talking about. Totally. I have to put my paper here. I appreciate your patience. I am very concerned about tree canopy. I don't know how many of the really mature trees would be lost. We still need them for climate, shading, safe on electric, and for aesthetics. I'm hoping that trees are saved instead of quickly fenced up. Thank you. Really, that's all I wanted to add. And I agree, Leslie, what you're talking about. More work needs to be done. We could really do something amazing here if we take the time and do it right. So I 100% support slowing down and doing it right. Thank you very much for your time and your hard work.
Thanks, Karen. Appreciate your input.
I will now mute myself.
Thanks for being here also. I think Karen makes a couple of good points that I might want to add to. As river access is important. I can't remember if that is specifically called out, but ensuring that, you know, maybe not just park space, but boat launch and recreation are made available to. That's one of the non-quantifiable things in an environmental assessment is how the space can cultivate a love and appreciation for the natural environment. Yeah, and agree that tree canopy is important and should be specifically called out. I think we talk about impermeable surfaces, or that's covered, but canopy I don't think is mentioned.
I'm taking down notes here as well, and but yeah, whoever would like, I believe most folks would be able to have access to this. I think everyone should have access to it if you can click on it from the. And I can also, folks want to send it. I can send around the link as well too after the meeting.
Anna, can I?
Please, yeah.
I don't want to call somebody else out, but Sandy, hi. You had some great ways that you talked about the engagement issues on Roof Depot. And I'm wondering if some of this conversation about the document coming out being very large and very difficult for community members to review in such a short period of time, if it invites some of that same language that you had used for Roof Depot, if that would be a good addition here, you think? And I'm
sure,
putting you on the spot.
No, I can try to find that language. I'll plug it in.
But do you?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. I think it feels like a roundabout way of avoiding community engagement, but saying that there's community engagement happening. So yeah.
Barbara, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I want to agree with the objection to the height of buildings. I think they should conform to whatever laws there are now, or if that's considered impractical, then the laws should change. I don't appreciate, exceptions.
All right, thanks, Barbara, and thanks everyone. I think we're kind of running up on time allotted for this. I think Nick, I appreciate your the motion sort of outline that you said before. So I think Kim and I think have both been taking notes. I mentioned the list before. I added public comment through means besides written comments and for a longer period of time, tree canopy assessment and transparency, water access and recreational access, and the height of buildings should conform to laws, or the laws should change, and rather than a variance being granted. Are there any objections? So what I would propose is that we sort of approve this list of things to add with proper wording and make it coherent into the letter at the discretion of the chair, and then submit the letter before June 24th. Before we make a motion, are there any things on that list that people don't agree with or want to contest and have more discussion about?
I just want to call it, I think that building height is already in the letter. So Barbara, I'm not sure if you were suggesting a change to that wording that was in there, or if you were just saying that you want to amplify that point.
Oh, Barbara, you're muted.
And also, I don't know if I tried to take the cumulative effects of 94 piece and actually write the sentence in there. Hopefully that satisfies Kim's comment.
I just wanted to amplify the point that was already in the letter. I didn't want
Okay.
to.
Got it. Thanks, Barbara. Thanks, Nick, for that clarification. Does that all make sense? Any other objections to any parts of the letter that exist or the list of additions? Okay, sensing none. Does someone want to make a motion to approve a letter? I don't want to make the motion. Does someone want to make the proper motion?
I'm happy to, since I know how we need to. So I move that we approve this letter with the additional topics that Anna just read out, including access to water, tree canopy, and other related issues, community engagement. subject to final edits by the chair and vice chair before sending prior to the June 24th, 2021 due date.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I just
I
want
second
to,
the motion.
okay, I got Leslie.
Oh.
Okay, great. I wanted to just ask too, it sounded like it cut out a little bit, Nick, right? When you said around like at the discretion of the chair, I think. So with final edits at the
with
discretion of the chair?
Chair and vice chair.
Okay,
Since Anna has been facilitating the meeting and has the list, I believe it is appropriate for the two of them to do the final composition.
okay.
And of course, they may call on any other members that they wish to help.
Can I just make sure that the climate piece and the emissions were also still on the list?
Yes, I can read the list really quickly. Complete an environmental assessment worksheet. Discuss soil contaminants, how they'll impact the air, water, and how if soil is contaminated, how they're planning to transport it and mitigate impacts from that. Cumulative impacts from emissions from 94. Construction emissions in the supply chain using fracked gas for heating, and additional anticipated cumulative impacts if from 94 if there's an improvement to 252. Mitigation or enforcement around mitigation, so ensuring that there are inspectors both during construction and afterwards during operation to make sure they're doing what they're saying they're going to do around mitigation of environmental impact broadly. Public comment period, that there should be another option to weigh in besides written comments, and that the 30-day time length was too short. Tree canopy should be assessed and transparent, and maybe that they should mitigate any trees they're gonna cut down with additional trees, and there should be water access to cultivate stewardship and provide recreation opportunities.
I have a question about the soil. On man, I kind of blanked out on that. Is that going to? Is there a place in there that we need to know where they're going to deposit the waste, the contaminant waste? Is there did you include that in there, where the location for the contaminants are going to be stored at?
I'll add that. Thanks, Leslie. So where the location for contaminated waste will be stored. Thank you. And also transported too.
I did include that in there too. And we do also have Julia from our office, Evelyn, as well, taking notes. So hopefully we'll be able to capture most of those. But so thanks. If there wasn't anything that, or if there was additional, yeah, let us know.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So thanks, everyone.
Right.
We got a second from Leslie.
Yep. So
right.
I'll just, I'll sort of, here's the motion: approve the UHT AUAR comments letter drafted by Aaron with additional topics provided by the commission, which Anna read, with final edits at the discretion of the chair and vice chair. How does that sound? Awesome. Okay. And then we'll just go down the list of folks and just say yay or nay to approval of that. Max Dalton.
Aye.
Indigo David Liu.
Aye.
Tess Dornfeld.
Aye.
Matthew Douglas May.
Aye.
Sandy Fazeli.
Yes.
Lauren Fleming.
Aye.
Leslie Jackson.
Aye.
Anna Johnson.
Aye.
Toya Lopez. Toya, are you there? Barbara Lundy.
Aye.
Nick Binderman,
Yes.
Jacqueline Zabetta.
Aye.
We have 11 ayes and no nays, so that motion carries.
Excellent. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you. So yeah, we'll work with you on gathering our notes on that after this. So
Perfect. Thank you.
thanks.
So I think Tess emailed out, moving on to the next agenda item, and recognizing we're a little bit short on time. Tess, do you want to talk about the line 3 item?
Yeah, let me just pull up the documents. So line 3 is in the process of being built in northern Minnesota. It's a tar sands oil pipeline that Enbridge is building across Anishinaabe Treaty Lands, and 200 bodies of water in northern Minnesota. So the city council has been considering a resolution of opposition to line 3, and the St. Paul City Council has been doing the same. I was just in touch with Cam Gordon, who said that Cam Gordon, Jeremy Schroeder, and Alondra Cano had drafted this resolution that I sent around. They've been asked to hold off until after the end of the special legislative session before they reintroduce it, but since that is likely to happen before our next meeting and any chance for us to take action, I wanted to bring it up tonight. And Cam said that it would be helpful to have CX support. So I guess if we just want to, so there's the resolution. Just express to City Council that CX supports passage of this resolution.
Thank you, Tess. So I think in terms of process, it seems like we could potentially write a brief statement saying that we support the resolution, if that's something we want to do. This might, just because of time also, if folks are okay with letting the chair or vice chair sort of come up with a very basic sentence of like CX supports the resolution, we could do that. Alternatively, we could draft a resolution or a statement of support now if folks are agreeable to that. But for also, I don't want to jump ahead. That's, I think, the question on the table. So also the question is, does CX support this resolution? And if so, do we want to submit a statement that we do? Nick.
I think knowing some of the issues we ran into with clerk-related things in our last term, I think having nothing going into the letter for the chair might be a little dubious, so I'd suggest we at least give the chair something to work with. And then if we have additional points that we can't work out tonight, there's at least guidance. Mm-hmm. And I'm about to hit enter in the chat with a draft statement that I just sketched together, unless there's somebody else that wants to draft something.
Thanks, Nick.
I'll give others a few seconds if they have something prepared already that they want to do.
I'll just say that I do not, and I would very much appreciate having something.
Yeah, thanks, Nick.
Yeah, I think if you want to press enter, Nick, feel free. Are there any concerns or anything? Yeah, any concerns with the draft resolution that Tess sent? Barbara?
I realize that I'm in a minority, but I feel that the present pipeline is at the end, I've heard anyway, that the present pipeline is at the end of its life, and that environmental concerns could be even greater than a decent actual construction of a new one. So I oppose opposing it's a double negative, but I am in favor of the new draft line 3 pipeline. And I realize I'm in a minority. I just wanted to say it.
Noted. Thank you, Barbara.
For the benefit of the folks who are on the phone, should someone read the statement? Should I read it since I wrote it, or Kim or Anna, do you want to read it?
If you wanted to read it, that would be great, Nick. Thank you.
Okay, so the statement to start with, at least, is SEAC supports adoption of a resolution opposing the Line 3 pipeline project. As a citizen advisory group focused on cross-cutting environmental issues, many of which are touched by the Line 3 project, this action by the city aligns with SEAC's goals to improve the environment for Minneapolitans and all Minnesotans.
Sandy?
Could we also add at the end, like, comma, including Indigenous people in Minnesota?
Good call out.
Yeah, I think environmental justice in general, seeing as we have talked about that a lot.
Thanks, Lauren. So adding maybe on cross-cutting environmental justice issues.
Yeah, that's what I thought might fit really well in there too. I was just going to add that in my.
So I'm writing center environmental justice and Indigenous rights issues while improving the environment for Minneapolitans and all Minnesotans. How does that sound to folks?
I think that sounds good. Thanks, Kim, for capturing this in real time.
Can I ask something? Is there, I don't know, but maybe I'm thinking too much out the box. Do you think we should say something about health, or health issues or something like that? I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking out the box. I don't know. I don't know. Sorry.
No, Leslie, I think that's a great addition. I'm not sure. I'm looking at the statement to see where it might fit in well. To maybe, yeah, to improve the health and the environment and health for Minneapolitans and all Minnesotans. Because there's certainly health issues with both climate change and with oil spills in water bodies. Sandy, is your hand up? Anew? Okay. Any other thoughts or additions? Thanks, Nick, for drafting this. Thanks so much, Tess, for bringing this forward. I know we're out of town. I'm sorry to be rushing through this important topic, but want to leave it open for just one other moment for additional thoughts.
Would it be possible to get just a zoom in of Kim's screen?
On this statement? Is that what you're thinking?
Because I think you added in the health piece.
Right. I did. Let me just see if I can get this zoomed in on here.
it's like Inception, like a screen within a screen at the moment.
Exactly. Yes, I know.
Right.
I'm kind of like, I'm going to
So-
take it off of this and then do a rescreen. Hang on just a quick second. I'll take this off the one. Then I'll put it on this one.
Thank you, Kim.
Yeah.
And Kim, while you're while you're working on that, the wording that I put in the chat for environmental justice and indigenous rights issues, shouldn't have an apostrophe, is slightly different than what you had.
Okay.
I don't know if people have a preference of one versus the others.
Both look good to me.
We'll leave that to the discretion of the vice chair and chair then.
All right, sounds great. So is there someone willing to make a motion to adopt this draft statement with final approval with minor additions or subtractions at the discretion of the chair and our vice chair?
I'm not sure which version is the most up to date. I think, cross-cutting environmental justice issues, because it is like community impact, environmental justice, and equity are part of SEAC, like the description of what we're supposed to do. I would maybe include in the last sentence goals to improve environment, maybe say environmental justice there, health and equity.
Sounds good, thanks. All right, is there a motion?
I move.
Sorry, who was that? Sandy? Do we have a
I'll
second? Is that Leslie?
Was that what's his name?
Oh,
But I'll
Divine.
second it.
Oh, Divine. Okay.
Was that right?
I second.
Okay, thank you.
So the motion is that we will request the chair and vice chair draft a statement of support for the Line 3 resolution opposing the Enbridge Line 3 tar sands oil pipeline. And we've got the sort of draft statement here, which you've seen, which I'll include in there as well to work off of.
Perfect, thanks, Kim.
All right, so, I guess we have to take the roll too. All right. Hang on a second, let's figure out this. Go. Okay, Max Dalton.
Aye.
Indigo, David Liu,
Aye.
Tess Dornfeld,
Aye.
Matthew Douglas May,
Aye.
Sandy Fazzelli,
Yes.
Lauren Fleming,
Aye.
Divine Islam,
Aye.
Leslie Jackson,
Aye.
Anna Johnson,
Aye.
Barbara Lundy,
Nay.
nay. Nick Minderman,
Aye.
and Jacqueline Zapata.
Aye.
Okay, we have 11 yays and 1 nay. So that motion passes.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. I'm really appreciating everyone's input tonight and always, but I guess it's different being in the driver's seat a little bit. But thanks for making my job easy. Old business, there are still notes from the groups in Google Doc when we talked about the climate action plan. That link is still available. Announcement from commissioners. Our next meeting will be held in person starting July 1st at City Hall, with the governor lifting his emergency powers. We default to existing law that governs community meetings, which says that we are required to meet in person. Kim, do you want to say anything about that and answer any questions in the last couple minutes?
Sure. Yeah. So I just we will still have a link. You can join through the link, though you have to be limited to the number of times you join in a year to 3. So, rules around everything. If the order is not lifted by the time this meeting is, theoretically, we could still have the meeting virtually, but at this point, it looks like it's going to be out. And so we have reserved room to 132 City Hall for the July 21st meeting from 5 to 7. Again, we'll have the call in to be participating as well too, but that's where we'll be. I'll confirm all that as the session ends and we go into July 1st. Nick, you had a question?
Yeah, Kim, just to clarify, so you're saying that a member can be a voting participant up to 3 times per year virtually, or if you're participating virtually, you're participating as a member of the public and not able to vote? Because I think the old policy was the latter, that you could listen in, but you couldn't vote.
No, because they are allowing it, according to what we've heard so far, that if there is a reason you cannot make it to that meeting, you can be participating in the meeting as a voting member because you're either ill or some other reason, but it's limited to 3 times a year.
Thank you. That's helpful clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? I know that's a big change. And if there are additional questions, feel free to email Kim about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he's happy to answer. All right, we are right at 7 p.m. You can see the list of additional proposed June 16th SEAC meeting topics in the agenda. It includes the sustainable building policy, lift scooters and bikes, the St. Anthony Falls Lock and Dam sale, Metro Transit EV bus purchases, 100% renewable electricity blueprint. If folks have additional things they want to talk about, just email Aaron and Kim and myself or the whole group, and we'll make it all work. Any other final thoughts before a motion to adjourn? All right, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
All right, Barbara moves adjournment. Second?
We just need a second.
We just do it.
Yeah, and then you can just, if there's no one opposed, you can
okay.
We don't need a roll call on that one.
Great. That's a great rule. Wait, we do need a second though?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I second.
Thanks,
This is
Sandy. Anyone opposed? All right, hearing none. Thanks everyone for your time. I hope you all have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
All right, everybody.
Bye, everyone.